The Shadow's Edge, a dark fantasy tale prologue. The last inn, the weeping crow stood, as a weathered sentinel against the creeping dusk, its timber walls blackened by years of smoke and sorrow. Few now remembered the reason for its name, though. Kaelin Shadowmere suspected it was a tribute to the countless souls who had passed through its doors, never to return to the light of day. The autumn wind, bearing the scent of decay from the thornwood, pressed close against the eastern wall, as if trying to force its way inside. Kaelin drew his travel-worn cloak tighter about his shoulders, the coarse wool doing little to keep out the chill that seemed to seep from the very air. 3 days he had ridden through those accursed trees, where every shadow seemed to move with a purpose of its own, and the air whispered of ancient malice. Behind him, his sturdy bay mare, Silverwind, snorted and stamped, her eyes rolling white in the dim light, sensing some unseen menace prowling the gathering darkness. "Peace, old friend," Kaelin murmured, though his own voice carried a tremor he could not suppress. "We shall find warmth and rest within, or we shall find naught at all." The inn's heavy oak door swung open with a groan that echoed like the lament of a distant grave. Inside, the common room was steeped in a gloom that the flickering hearth fire could not wholly banish. A handful of patrons huddled over their ale, their faces pale as parchment and their eyes hollow as empty wells. The innkeeper, a bent creature, whose age could not be guessed, raised his head as Kaelin entered. "Welcome, traveler," the old man croaked, his voice like dry leaves scraping across stone. "Though I wonder what manner of business brings you to these forgotten lands, where the very stones remember grief." Kaelin approached the bar, the sound of his boots echoing strangely in the oppressive silence. On his belt, an ancient sword, its pommel a snarling wolf's head, hung heavily. Beneath his cloak, a silver pendant, also in the shape of a wolf, pulsed with a faint inner light, a light that seemed dimmer here than it had in the world beyond. "The Thornwed. I seek answers to questions I dare not speak aloud," he said, his voice low and measured, for the dreams had driven him here. The innkeeper's rheumy eyes seemed to bore into Kaelin's very soul. "Aye," he whispered, "they all come, seeking answers in the end. But tell me, young lord, are you prepared for what you might find?" A gaunt merchant from a corner of the room suddenly raised his head, his eyes wide with a terror that had settled deep in his bones. "The dead walk," he whispered, his voice cutting through the unnatural silence. "I've seen them with my own eyes. My brother Aldrich, what died of the fever last winter, I seen him standing at the edge of the thornwood. But his eyes were black as coal, and when I called his name, he just smiled." The innkeeper nodded grimly. "And it's not just the recently buried that stir. The old barrows, sealed with iron and stone by the ancients, have begun to crack. Strange lights dance above them, and sometimes dot dot. You can hear them singing songs in tongues that were old when the world was young." As the innkeeper spoke, Kaelin felt the silver pendant beneath his cloak grow warm against his chest. The dreams the old man described mirrored his own visions, the great door of black stone, the voice calling from below. He now understood that his journey was no accident. He had been drawn here, guided by the whispers of a forgotten power. "I seek to understand what lies beyond this cursed door that haunts our sleep," Kaelin said. "Old Matthias, the village wise man, went to the eldest of the barrows 3 days past," the innkeeper said gravely. "He has not returned, though some say they have seen a figure in his robes standing guard before the barrow's entrance, watching." Always watching, a cold resolve hardened Kaelin's heart. A wise man's life or soul might yet hang in the balance. "Then to the barrows I must go," he declared, rising from the bar. "If he can be saved ... They went unprepared," Kaelin said gently, freeing his arm from the innkeeper's grip. But I do not travel defenseless. His hand moved to the wolf-headed pommel of his sword. My path leads to those barrows, whether I will it or no. Better to go with purpose than be drawn there helpless in a dream, ignoring the dire warnings. Kalen turned back to the innkeeper. Which barrow, and how far? He asked. The old man hesitated, then whispered, the Ravenhill barrow. Follow the old stone road east until it forks, then take the path that leads through the standing stones. But go not in darkness, I beg you. Whatever walks there grows stronger when the sun fails. As dawn's first pale light crept through the inn's grimy windows, Kalen prepared for his grim journey. He mounted Silverwind, and the Mare's eyes rolled white with terror as they turned toward the eastern road. The journey to the fork was uneventful, but the landscape grew more desolate. With each mile, as though the very land was dying, trees stood leafless, their branches reaching toward the gray sky like the arms of SUPPLICANTS dotted the standing stone's ancient monoliths, carved with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when glimpsed from the corner of one's eye. Silverwind would go no further. Kalen dismounted, tethering the trembling Mare to the least ominous of the stones. Wait for me here, old friend, he murmured. If I do not return by sunset, find your way back to green fields and kind masters.